My name is Rob, and this is Songbirding. This is a bonus episode I'm going to do about finding birds in bad weather. And as you can hear, I'm in a little bit of bad weather right now. It should serve as a good example. So when I was thinking about what to do for bonus episodes, one of my thoughts was, well, instead of trying to studio record something, which is always a little frustrating, and trying to isolate noises and trying to create this almost disembodied voice that is separated from its environment, let's try just recording all outdoors, even if there's not any birds necessarily to listen to, because it is a episode where I'm going to be talking and describing techniques you can use for finding birds in bad weather. So also a small announcement that I have an interview coming up on Bird Banter with Ed Pullen, and that's going to be coming out soon. Just look up Bird Banter podcast and you should find it there. And thanks to Ed for that. That was really fun to chat with him, and it should give you a little bit of insight into my thinking behind the podcast and how I went about it, and the process of figuring out what to do in the podcast. So another little announcement, just in case you are in the Southern Ontario region, I am doing a talk Sunday, November 17th in the afternoon, 2 p.m. At the Art Gallery of Hamilton, the AGH. It's free. I'll be talking about bioacoustics and the Hamilton Bioacoustics Project, of which content from that has generated episodes of the Songscapes podcast, which is what I've worked on earlier. So I'm at the Vinemount Swamp, which is a wetland, flooded forest kind of wetland, east of Hamilton, Ontario, southwest of Toronto, as the crow flies. And it's late October, so there's still leaves on the trees, although they've changed colors. Some trees are bare. It's cool, but not cold, at least by my standards. And with this wind, you'd think not a very good time for birding. However, bad weather can be a good time to find birds if you're not looking for them for photography necessarily, because bad weather often gives you bad lighting. But let's say you're doing a survey, or you're just looking for birds to watch, look at, listen. Harder to listen, of course, during inclement weather like this when there's a lot of leaves out, but I'll get to that after. The poor weather, though, can help you find birds. Sometimes make it easier because they actually will congregate in predictable spots. So I'm walking through the Vinemount Swamp, which is east of Hamilton, Ontario, southwest of Toronto. It's too windy of a day to really get many birds singing or audible. You'll probably hear bursts of wind as I talk here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about finding birds. In weather like this, some people think it's terrible for birding, and that's somewhat true for birding by ear, in the sense that you want to hear a lot of songs and calls. It's a little tougher with the wind going on. However, it does present an opportunity. Rough weather like this isn't great for a bird flying. Weather like this isn't good for flight for birds, for migration. because I do tend to hunker down. And that means if you can find yourself a spot where there's not a lot of wind on a windy day, so maybe a little hollow, something that shelters from the wind, that's where you can find where the birds are hiding, because they're still going to be around. It's not like they vanish during bad weather. They need to hide somewhere too. And so if I'm out on a day where it is a strong wind like this, it's always a good idea to try to find a spot that isn't so windy. Now, unfortunately, I'm on a trail that doesn't have very many of those spots, so I'm not going to be able to do any kind of demonstration, although not that you can really see what I'm doing anyways. But I can give some examples. So now I'm seeing the blue jay, so in a somewhat okay spot. So let's say you're in a big flat area and the wind has no obstacles in the way. Not a great spot for birds. However, I've just encountered some American goldfinch now. And there we go, there's the goldfinch. So, why did this work? This worked here because I'm walking along a trail in a rather swampy area. But this trail now encounters a tall grass section, and this particular tall grass is an awful one called Phragmites that's invasive in Ontario. It's huge though. Creates a windbreak. So as I encountered it, on the side of the grass that doesn't get the wind, that's sheltered from the wind, there were some goldfinches hiding in there. So that's one example, which coincidentally came up just as I was discussing that, so that was good timing. So you can extend this out in other ways. So let's say you have a woodlot you know about and it's a windy day. Go to the side of the, okay, I almost stepped on a vole. They're very brave today. Little rodent ran across in front of me. So, if you see a woodlot and you're thinking, okay, where are the birds here? You would look for what would be called the lee side or leeward side of the forest. So, this woodlot, and that's the side where it's breaking the wind, or that's the side where the wind is broken, more accurately, and so you would seek shelter from the wind on that side, and so would birds. So that's one little tip for finding birds in bad weather. And once you encounter that area, then you can bird by ear a little better, although it depends on the season. You're in a season like this where there's still a lot of leaves out, a little noisier, so you're not going to hear as easily. Middle of summer is one of the worst because there are so many leaves that a windy hike is a loud hike. Winter is one of the best, less leaves. There might still be leaves depending on where you live, and there may be conifers that have leaves and other things that make noise, but it's a better time of the year for that. Although strong winds also mean strong wind chill if you're in a colder part of the world. So the other thing you can do is if there is a trail cutting through the woods themselves can be a windbreak depending on how thick they are and how strong the wind is. The example is for what I'm in right now. You can hear a lot of wind, but it's not very strong where I'm at because the trail's cutting straight through and the wind's getting broken at the lower levels, like where I am on the ground. Higher levels up in the air, there's still a lot of wind up there. It's not so broken. That's because I'm in a swampy area where a lot of the windbreak is low to the ground, where you have a lot of shrubs and short trees, whereas up high in the air, not much breaking that wind, so it looks more dramatic up there. So bad weather, another consideration to be made is, let's say you aren't looking for little songbirds, but maybe you're looking for raptors. Little tougher, but one thing you can look for are things like quarries, where there's going to be a cliffside. At least in this area, that's a good spot to look. But I guess you could also look to escarpments, cliffs, those kinds of things, because they're gonna, with this kind of wind, create some updrafts that may be of use to raptors if they're migrating or just looking to get up in the air a bit. Depends on your level of bad weather, visibility, etc. But if you think like how a raptor would think, they're looking for updrafts, they're looking for ways to get up higher in the air without as much effort, so they're going to look for spots where the wind is pushed upwards. So also consider places where the wind is being pushed upwards as a spot where migrating birds, such as raptors, are going to catch an updraft. That works anytime. It doesn't have to be bad weather, but it doesn't have to be high winds. After the winds are low, that's the only spots they can go for a good lift is cliffside, quarries, etc., things like that. So the other point in poor weather, not just finding just a place that's away from the wind, but if it's also away from the wind and has a food source. So a lot of berries, potentially some bugs if it's still in the right season for insects. So where there's some moving water or a stagnant water, depending on the type of bugs they're looking for. Both of those are good bets without inclement weather, but with it, they can be both sheltered and have food. That's a bonus. Also having some actual visual shelter, for lack of a better term, a place birds can hide, physically hide, also helps, because they're certain to have predators thinking the same thing, get away from the wind, get into a more sheltered location. So they would also likely prefer to not get eaten, of course. So places where they cannot just hide from the wind, but also just hide, or at least cut down on the amount of visibility they have. But the other technique they do use is flocking behavior, so they'll flock together. So when you do, let's say, hear a chickadee or you hear something calling, perhaps maybe you're not looking for chickadees because they're an easy find, for example, but there are a hint because of flocking behavior. If you hear a chickadee, you will inevitably find something else with that chickadee, many something else's with chickadees, because they are one of those species that a lot of other bird species like to hang out with. So this bonus bad weather episode of Songbirding, created, narrated, recorded by me, Rob Porter, and we're going to end this off with some sounds, which I'll edit in, we're going to end with some fox sparrows, F-O-X, fox like the mammal, sparrows, and these are some birds that I found a couple of years ago while in some bad weather, and I recorded them along with some other sparrows with them. There's some white-throateds thrown in there as well, and northern cardinal, but they were found a little gully away from the away from the wind, where there's a little creek going through. Perfect shelter for them. Near Hamilton, Ontario.